Guys, welcome to Robin Hood Diaries. Thank you for joining me this evening, as always. Every day, 365, every evening, every morning, every middle of the night, wherever you are, as I say. As previewed, as promoted, as I also always say, tonight is about outrageous funerals, and particularly those, of course, close to us, the family, and so forth. So, I got a shit ton of funeral stories, some of them happy, sad, like when I scattered my partner's ashes on the north shore of Hawaii, Kauai. I rented a schooner, I guess that's depressing. But then on the way back, I passed by Charo's house, and she waved at me and blew me kisses. Her house is right next to her restaurant, which used to be in Kauai. So, like I said, happy, sad ones, there's tons of them. But remarkable ones, I just thought, again, doing the dishes off the top of my head, I would share with you. So, different sides of the family. Let's start with my poor husband's side of the family. Well, his mother passed away, and we were there for her passing. And we were, of course, there for her reception. After a beautiful passing, we went first to the funeral, which would be an internment in the ground because she was cremated. So we're all there, me, my husband, my son, and her best friend, my father's mother's best friend. No, I'm sorry, my husband's mother's best friend and her daughter. And then my husband's stepfather, who's kind of a very kind of pragmatic, sort of logical, mechanical kind of guy. So we get there, and there's something completely wrong with the internment. Like, it's not, according to the stepdad, it was like it degraded too fast, and it needed to be some kind of steel, not that kind of whatever, hybrid, whatever it was. So the poor guys had to take it out and then go back into like the cemetery where storage place and get the right style, which he went with them to make sure it was, and then brought it back out, had to replace it. And so I'm here kind of trying to, be supportive of the stepdad. And I look around, and first of all, my son and the girl are off running and playing by the lake with the swans, and we're in the midst of trying to finalize this funeral thing with this erroneous internment thing. So I go at least looking for my husband and the friend. Logan and the girl are off running around the lake, and I finally find my husband. And my husband's not kind of been in very many cemeteries, nor I guess has her friend. But I found them sitting on a tombstone. They were sitting on a tombstone, and they were smoking a blunt. So I had to casually explain to them that those are not for seating. Even the ones that look like little teeny benches, that's not for you to go have a cigarette. That's part of the tomb. That is part of the gravestone. It's got writing. So they finished their blunt, and we all sort of went back, and the thing was the right thing in the ground, and we said our prayers or whatever, and that was that, or so we thought. Poor kid, my husband. I mean, he was over the whole funeral thing anyway from the time that, his when his grandmother passed. Again, he was there, sort of in charge of everything as usual, military, and unfortunately, the plot was next to her dead husband's plot. So after the viewing, Michael came down to, I guess, with his uncle to inspect the plot or whatever. And once they had dug it, his grandfather's plot had spilled over into his grandmother's plot, and the casket had broken open. And you can imagine what came out of the casket, cascading from his plot into poor Michael's grandmother's plot was the grandfather, sort of straddling the two plots. So needless to say, my husband's not very fond of cemeteries or anything associated with that. I guess which brings me to my side of the family, where my mother passed away. My mother's funeral was actually in Dublin, next to her mother and father, which is in like the cemetery that's like from the 1100 BC. And so I wasn't there for that. My relatives, my cousins and aunt took care of that, because that's what she wanted. And I ain't flying to no Dublin anytime soon. So wasn't. So that happened, but they had a Catholic mass here with her sister and her sister's kids and my cousin's kids, my third cousin's kids, whatever. Everybody at this Catholic mass, that they do for dead people. And they give them like a half a dozen names to say, like, requiem mass, whatever, for, I don't know. This big, burly, dirty, disheveled, screaming, homeless guy comes running in to my mother's reception, her Catholic mass, funeral mass, and he's screaming. And he's like spooking people. He's in the back of the church and he's like raising hell. Now, my son is with me. You don't know my son very well, but I do. So my son quietly got up. He's, a lanky guy. I guess you could consider him a featherweight as a boxer because he can tear people's heads off. And he quietly got up, went to the back of the church, escorted the gentleman out of the church, and proceeded to beat him to a pulp. I know that sounds terrible, you guys, but hey, my son was very tight with his nana. No one is doing that on his watch. There's certain things, and you just don't do certain things around my son. That's one of them. So it wasn't a hospital trip, but I don't want to know, actually. I didn't go outside. He came back inside, and we gave each other the high five and continued on with the reception. I know, guys, that's terrible. It's just how my son and I roll. So, me personally, okay, so let's get to that. So, I'm living with this actress who's a very old friend of the family. She and her sister and her mother and her father were very tight with my family, going all the way back to when I was a little kid. They lived in Malibu. I would go every 4th of July for the fireworks. Gwen Wells. She's an actress, was an actress. She was in Nashville. She was the aspiring singer that sort of got made fun of in the supper club scene. That was Gwen. She was a brilliant actress. She passed tragically, and I went to her funeral, which was jam packed, full of celebrities, like too many celebrities. I mean, the yard was not big enough, and there was all these like TV, like, people you'd recognize from series and movies. And I was like, okay. I mean, I'm in movies, but I don't like hobnob like that. I get kind of awkward. But I spotted Elliott Gould. Now I know that sounds weird, but I know Elliott Gould because my best friend's his son. And so I like clung to Elliott Gould like he was across the pool. I'm like, hello, hello. I had to remind him, I'm Jason's, best friend. Remember, I came to your house. Eric Bogart had a birthday and whatever, whatever. Well, his son, whatever. So I got in a lovely, engaging conversation with Elliott that I never had a chance to have when I was much younger and hanging out with him. He actually took me to my one and only basketball game. I just remember that. Elliott Gould took me. He had, second row seats, and I'd never seen a basketball game. And I actually liked basketball for a while, watching basketball. So thanks, Mr. Gould. And well, the thing about Gwen is that her passing, first of all, when I left her reception, somebody tore out my brand new stereo from my SUV, whatever. Anyway, so Gwen was very dear to me. Gwen was the girlfriend of Richard Perry, who was a famous music producer. And I lived underneath Gwen and Richard Perry's home in Laurel Canyon. It was my first apartment, $400 cash a month, and I got the whole below part of the old house. when I had to move, Gwen gave me, a goodbye present. We were very tight, and I talked to her once before she passed, and that was it. It was kind of sad. But before I moved out, she gave me a rolled up poster surprise as a goodbye gift, and it was a huge Warhol poster that had been signed by Warhol. It was his big blue Indian Native American poster. Huge, like almost wall size, signed. And I, in turn, gave that to my father as a birthday gift. And he had it beautifully framed and always bragged about how I had given him this Warhol. Unfortunately, when he died, or no, when he was moved into care, shall we say, in all of the fracas of his being relocated, somehow that gigantic Warhol was stolen along with other things in his home. It was kind of a mishmash of people all around. People didn't really know, friends of friends, and I guess they dismantled the whole Warhol off the wall and somehow moved it out through the front door. Um, but that was a shame because it was like, it was the one thing I kind of wanted. But so if anyone sees a big blue Andy Warhol poster of a Native American, that's mine. So, my dad's funeral was very surreal to sort of wrap things up for me. My entire next book is focused on very personal family matters, particularly revolving around several members of my family. So that book's locked in. I can share whatever I want with you because I already have my second book locked in, and it's very focused on very specific issues. So this is a free for all, kids. Anything I can think of that might have gone into like a second book or whatever, it's all yours, kids, because it's not going in any book. But let's just say my dad's funeral was very awkward, very weird. I get to the funeral home, like for the paperwork, and nobody even knows what state he was born in, which surprised me. I had to tell everybody in the family that no, he was born in Illinois, not Iowa. But whatever. I'd been there. Population 300. I knew his Aunt Jackie, who actually looked a little bit like my sister. But so that was just very bizarre, and these are things I'll get into in my next book. I felt like a stranger in a strange land. There was a weird security setup at Hollywood Forever, and it was kind of over abruptly after we let some birds fly or whatever. I gave kind of a eulogy. It was just altogether just uncomfortable and strange or unusual. So I don't know. That's at least I covered my side, a little bit of my son, definitely my husband, and I don't know what else to leave you with. But I thought I would leave you with. It's not a death show, but it is my favorite poem, and I want it read at mine or something like that. And it does sort of have to do with how to kind of live one's life, not end one's life. And it's from Alice in Wonderland. And it says, if you'll excuse me using my husband's phone, it says, "Do you love me?" Alice asked. "No, I don't love you," replied the White Rabbit. Alice frowned and clasped her hands together as she did whenever she felt hurt. "See," replied the White Rabbit, "now you're going to start asking yourself what makes you so imperfect and what did you do wrong so that I can't love you, at least a little. You know, that's why I can't love you. You will always be loved, Alice, and you will not always be loved. There will be days when others will be tired and bored with life and will have their heads in the clouds, and that will hurt you. Because people are like that. They somehow always end up hurting each other's feelings, whether through carelessness, misunderstanding, or conflicts with themselves. If you don't love yourself at least a little, if you don't If you don't create an armor of self-love and happiness around your heart, the feeble annoyances caused by others will become lethal and will destroy you. The first time I saw you, I made a pact with myself. I will avoid loving you until you learn to love yourself. So, that's my funeral show. And I'm sure I went over, and I just want to say how much you mean to me. And again, it's the highlight of my day, and I look forward to sharing my stories with you, and thank you for putting up with them. And inevitably, I will see you tomorrow. I've got some really good idea shows lined up, and they're kind of all over the place. So you won't be bored. Okay. Take care, you guys. Bye.